Hey folks, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. My name is Sharon Florentine. I am the Senior Managing Editor for the channel brands, which are MSSP Alert and Channel E2E here at Cyber Risk Alliance. I am joined today for this session by Matt Bromley from LimaCharlie, and we are talking about a smarter approach to managing security services, the SecOps Cloud Platform. Before we jump into our conversation, I need to go over some housekeeping items with you, though. First, the session is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of it, or you want to share it with someone, a colleague, a friend, a family member, you will be able to do so. That will be available for you within about 24 hours after we finish up here. And second, we want your questions. So use the Q&A button there on your console and send us questions, comments, your personal experiences with the SecOps Cloud Platform, and we will work those into the discussion and into a Q&A at the end if we have time. So with that, Matt, I'm going to start off and ask you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do at LimaCharlie, and we'll go from there. So
yeah, absolutely. Sharon, just making sure you can hear me. We're good on audio video.
Sounds great. Looks great.
Awesome. All right.
Let's go.
Okay. Good. Perfect. Well, my name is Matt Bromley. I am the lead solutions engineer over here at LimaCharlie. I've been with LimaCharlie for a little over 2 years, almost 2.5 years now. And I've had a chance to really kind of see the company grow and kind of deliver on this mission we've got for managed services. And I'm really excited to be here, to talk to you about it. B, my background traditionally has been kind of steeped in like the IR, MDR space. I spent a lot of time in managed detection and response, and then prior to that, incident response for far way too long. I've spent way too many late nights dealing with all of the things that nation state actors do, that criminal threat actors do, that all sorts of things happen. And I had a chance to kind of help build out infrastructure and help build out a product that was geared towards better providing those services. And I immediately was like, okay, I got to be here. I got to do it. So it was a really easy kind of introduction for me to get here.
Okay, cool. I can imagine incident response for that long gets overwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah. No, you absolutely get to a point where you're like, I want to celebrate this holiday. I think I actually want to. I want to enjoy this Friday. I want to make a plan and stick to it. I think world's a little different these days, but I will say in the 2010s, threat actors were. I mean, there was a lot going on. Not that there isn't today, but I feel like then it was a lot of companies were trying to just figure out how to do things. There wasn't so much of a managed service presence. There was a lot more kind of consultant-based stuff that happened, and it was either I'm doing security and I bring in consultants to help out, or I've got managed services, but they're also bringing in consultants to help. So back in the day, it was like IR was kind of like a separate commodity that everyone either outsourced or was working on building internally. Mm-hmm. Whereas now I find that it is kind of like a staple feature in a lot of MDRs, a lot of MSSPs out there, where it's kind of like the ability to escalate and turn something into an IR if need be, is kind of like part of the service, right? It's part of the offering.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so, it's been a big change. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so tell me how that translates into what you're doing now and the SecOps Cloud, and how that helps address some of these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some content to share, and I'll bring that up in just a moment as well. In fact, I might bring it up while I'm talking, because then it's up and it's easy there for background, not background noise, but like to support what I'm saying, right? Hopefully it's up. Let me see. I'm
not seeing it yet, but
okay. Let's see if it takes a moment to come up. Hopefully it will. I mean, I see every sign that it's sharing, so we'll see what happens. If not, we'll figure it out. Totally okay.
Sounds good.
But yeah, so one of the things that we joke about here at LimaCharlie is that we always wanted to build the tools that we wish we had for a long time. And one of the things that I think both managed services and incident response as like a third-party outsource thing, one of the things that have always been an issue has kind of been the idea of like rapid deployment and scaling up. Number one. Number two, it's been the idea of I need to be able to start things as quickly as I possibly can. Time is of the essence has always been this kind of mantra that we've had inside of security, and it's been one of those things where I need something quick, I need it rapidly, I need it now, and I need it to be dependable, I need it to be reliable, I need it to be as up as long as I need it to be, because incident response engagements, can range in length, can time, severity, complexity, so on and so forth. And that kind of extends to managed services, because whilst managed services, whether it's an MSSP, whether it's an MDR, whatever type of service is being provided, there's a contractual part to it where there's like, I will be that function for you for a year, for 2 years, whatever it might be. But then there's also an underlying variability inside of that too, which is whether you are suffering an incident or we're just helping kind of respond to, normal noise and stuff like that, right? This idea of we're always at this precipice, and at any point we could easily fall under attack, if you will. I think creates a need to still kind of respect some of those ideologies that we had back in incident response. So I still need to be able to scale as quickly as I want, right? I still need to be able to respond as quickly as I want. I still need to be able to try, and I still need to be able to act as if I'm in an incident, but I want to do so with predictability. I want to do so with comfort, and I want to do so with control. What has happened in the past, Sharon, which I really hope has started to fade away, and I think with managed providers this has faded away, is that it felt like the checkbook was never opened until incident response happened, until an IR took
Right.
place, and it was like, oh, now we need all of these things, right? As
Yep.
opposed to like, let's prepare and let's get ahead of time for them. Let's get these things ready to go. Whereas now, if I have a managed service provider, I am actually kind of proactively looking, and I am actually proactively saying, hey, I'm going to implement something which is going to help me. I'm going to implement a provider, a third party. I'm going to implement processes that are going to help around this. So that brings us to, okay, if I'm the company that is sourcing all of these things and bringing all these things in, that's all super straightforward. Cool. I bring in a managed provider, box is checked, we're done. We're good to go, right? Where this gets tricky is now I'm the managed provider, and I've got to be able to respond to those different customer complexities. I've got to be able to respond to, and I'm calling this one the managed services dilemma, which is this idea of like, okay, cost, scalability, service innovation, and all the different things that I want to provide to my customers. I've got to be able to kind of manage and juggle all of these things. And that's what's expected of me in the industry, number one. Number two, that's the only way I'm going to grow my business. Because to be fair, there's other competitors to the left and to the right of me, you know? And let me see here. I need to be able to deal with those three key points. And you'll notice that where a lot of teams begin to suffer when they're trying to face those is that's what they need for their business to grow. I need to be able to balance costs. I need to be able to manage costs. I need to be able to scale, because if I can't bring on N plus one customer because we don't have the ability to scale our infrastructure out, then, I mean, in that case, then we're kind of stuck, which is, I'm great. My business is fantastic as long as we have 20 customers, because that's where I'm at from a person perspective. That's where I'm at from a process perspective, right? And then how do we innovate new things? We've all seen year after year after year, not only are the threats changing that are out there, but the way that we deal with them and the way that we respond to them, they're not only respective of cyber threats, but they're also respective of the tech stacks that are being brought in. I would make an argument that if you asked a lot of managed service providers, managed MSSPs or MDRs, if you ask them 5-6 years ago, like, how high on the priority list is identity management to you? How much are you actively seeking to combine different forms of telemetry into one place, right? We won't even talk about XDR as like a product, but more of an idea. And I think having to balance and deal with all these different issues and kind of look at them from an innovative stance and say, well, I need to build these things out because that's where my customers' tech stacks are at. And I need to be able to match where their tech stacks are at, not the other way around. I don't want to hinder their ability to grow as a company by saying, oh, as your managed security, I can only handle XYZ, right? I'm not going to last
Right.
long if I don't deal with
Right.
that, right? So there's the pressure of like, I need my business to grow. The other pressure is the customer also reaching up as well, because one of the interesting things about security is as a managed provider, I can join intelligence communities. I can monitor threat reports. I can do all sorts of things to increase my awareness and understanding of the threat landscape that's out there. My customers can do the exact same thing, right? This isn't like a segmented part where I get access to secret sauce that customers will never see, so I can pass that down as some sort of a benefit and say, oh, well, my
Right.
company has the insight on nation state actors from Eastern Asia, so therefore that's our benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can view these. Everyone can see them. So there's an increasing complexity of threats coupled with customers saying, I don't want the bare minimum anymore. I want you to be able to monitor these different parts of my tech stack. I want you to be able to monitor EDR, NDR. I want you to be able to monitor identity. I want you to be able to monitor cloud providers, all these different things. And that was definitely one of the biggest issues I was facing as an MDR person, kind of as I was walking out of the MDR space, was that
Mm-hmm.
growth of we need to match the customer's tech stack, not the other way around. And that, of
Interesting.
course, comes with costs, Sharon,
Yeah.
right? It's really easy to say, yeah, we'll handle and support all of the things. Send everything in and we'll take a look at it. That doesn't scale very well. So where this translates into what we do now at the SecOps Cloud Platform is we've kind of changed this idea of security where it's not, okay, we're LimaCharlie and this is the bucket. And as long as you fit in the bucket, you're good to go. We've
Mm.
decided to take a step back and say, if I want to build anything these days, I go to a cloud provider and I'll say, okay, I want to build a web application and it's going to require X database and Y DNS and V virtualization and M front end and Y API, whatever it might be, right? And then you build it and it's exactly as you need it to be, and the costs are predictable and everything is scalable. If my application serves one user or 100,000 users, it's literally just an automatic scale. And I like the idea of some of these basics when it comes to a managed security company, because if I have N+1 customers, customer one might require X EDR and Y NDR and Z logs. Well, customer two might require ABC and then DEF, and we can continue to run through alphabet letters. But point being, not every single customer is going to be the same, and we wanted to really capture that idea of what if there was a platform that just handled the infrastructure side of things, so that as a managed provider, I could build and scale as much as I needed to for whatever my customers needed. And that's kind of where the SecOps Cloud Platform came from, was that idea of, if you do this with a cloud provider, what if we just take the idea of a cloud platform and hyper focus on security? So how do we make it super approachable and easy for folks to use? It's an API first cloud native architecture. So again, we're kind of in that cloud ideal, right?
Mhm.
I want to be able to easily build out and integrate with anything that's out there. And that's very true as well of typical cloud platforms. Multi-tenancy upfront. We have this very, very strong belief here at LimaCharlie that your customers, should not be coalesced data. Every single customer, just along the idea of being unique, every single customer has specific data requirements, retention requirements, uh, data classification norms, terminology, nomenclature. It's all unique to customers. So one of the first things that LimaCharlie built out was being kind of that true multi-tenant approach, which means if I set up two customers on top of LimaCharlie, those two customers never coalesce. That data does not correspond with each other. And you can stand behind that as a managed provider as well. And you can say, I can have N plus one customers. But Sharon, we never got rid of the scalability side. We never made that process super difficult. It's
Right.
literally just easy to deploy. What you can do to one, you can do to many, or you can do to a few or
Mm-hmm.
many if need be. And then also the idea of scalability, right? Some of the early founders at LimaCharlie, our kind of key engineering founder, Maxime, came out of the Intel and IR space. I won't say similar to myself because we were both in like different parts of the IR world than the Intel world, but he also understood this idea of like when we're dealing with security, the need to scale up and down can be as temperamental as a demand for a new product or a demand for a site. And of course, this all
Mm-hmm.
ties back to incidents, right? Like it can be 9 a.m. on a Wednesday and I'm not suffering an incident. And it can be 10 a.m. on a Wednesday and the whole team is in a war room solving. Like it can be that quick. That is
Right.
not the time to figure out if you have enough CPU cycles on the database server to manage whatever it is you're about to have to deal with. So
Yeah.
this idea of scalability on demand, we think also applies towards managed security as well, and it makes it super easy. And then of course, there's also the business side of it too, which is if I have 100 customers running on top of some sort of pre-existing infrastructure, does customer number 101 break it? And if so, do I have a technical limitation as to how my business can grow? And if I do, that's really preventing me from kind of going any further. And I've got a couple use cases and a couple case studies we'll talk about momentarily about those. When
Cool.
it comes to something else that we wanted to revolutionize as well, pricing was one of the big ones. So this other idea that we really didn't like was, okay, there's only a few people out there who are providing some sort of service or some sort of product that you can build on top of, because we can't expect every managed provider out there to have to roll their own endpoint and roll their own network and roll their own identity and basically launch all of their own technology. That's not feasible at all. So one of the big changes that we had to come up with was, well, how do we offer and deliver this in a way that also mirrors the cloud platform approach, which is, again, dealing with the idea of scalability and understanding that what you need today may not be the same thing as what you need tomorrow. And that number may go up or down. We also came out with this idea of pay-per-use pricing, where very similar to a cloud provider, you would very, very straightforward say, today I need X, tomorrow I need Y. I only want to pay for X when I need it, and I only want to pay for Y when I need it. So we have pay-per-use pricing, very, very flexible, easy to control. It is responsive to what you do inside of your environment. So if you have 1,000 endpoints deployed today, and then tomorrow you have 2,000, it's responsive towards those 2,000. If you go the flip side and today you have two and tomorrow you have one, we're responsive to the decrease. You're not paying for things that you don't use. We're not locking you into long-term contracts and saying, okay, here's the band at which my technology can survive and can provide you what it is that you're looking for. And because you fall somewhere in this band, you need to pay for that band. We
Right.
weren't really a fan of that model. And that was one thing that our team wanted to really get away from, was locking folks into contracts or locking them into money that they just weren't spending. Because again, if I'm trying to grow the business and I'm trying to innovate, earmarking a number of funds for a contractual obligation towards technology and I'm not using 100% of that money does not help me grow. We're also very transparent. Anyone can go to limacharlie.io and see what our costs are. Admittedly, there's ways to make the cost cheaper, scale discounts and things like that. But if you wanted to go and just deploy and predict and say, I've got N customers, I've got X endpoints, I've got Y logs, let's go, I can give you that cost in about 2 minutes. It's really easy to go straight forward. And, for some, maybe there is that rigmarole of, hey, let's go out to a bunch of dinners and let's spend 4 to 6 months negotiating through a contractual process. But Sharon, I'll tell you right now, the number of folks
Mm-hmm.
I talked to who were like, wait, you mean we just had a call and I know my costs in 5 minutes? And I'm like, yeah, that's how quick and easy it should be. Again, mirroring that cloud platform approach. I can go to Google Cloud right now and say, I want to deploy these 50 things, and it will come back to the penny and say, okay, based on what you've said, this is what your costs are going to be. I can budget and plan around that. right? What I don't want to do is I kind of view this like the opposite, which is if you just deploy, and all of a sudden you turn around and you're like, oh, the cloud bill is here. Let's see. And there's this year's bonuses just because you weren't expecting what was
Right?
coming through, right? The
That
other
would be nice.
thing, wouldn't it be? It would be.
Yeah.
It would be nice, but it's worked out very well, and we've got a lot of MSSPs and MDRs who have really built around that predictability. The other thing that comes inherent with the SecOps Cloud Platform has also been the deployment freedom. I've wrapped these up into like multi-platform support, multi-telemetry support. This really ties back to that idea that I think managed providers should be following their customers' tech stacks. Obviously, we can't all become experts in everything, but the idea of if I'm going to provide certain services, I need to be able to scale my business. You're only going to do that by acquiring new customers, and new customers are going to walk in with new technology. And as much as I can automate or respond to technology with technology is going to be the fastest way for me to grow. Hiring people doesn't scale well. That's not going to get us where we want to be. It's going to have to be a technological approach, and we wrap that up in infrastructure. The flip side of that is we also make it super easy to get up and running, super easy to deploy, very rapid activation, very, very quick ability to go from zero to hero if you need. And then last but not least, that obviously as a managed provider gets you to market a lot faster.
Right.
I threw a few benefits together here, Sharon, that I'll call out for folks, and I've kind of already circled around them as well. But I would also love to get to a point where if we've got any questions and stuff, I'm probably a little bit away from getting towards those. But nonetheless, I want to bring up a few high level bullets that I think most of our MSSP customers are seeing. The first one is increased profit margins just by simply having better control over your costs. And also, we're usually more cost effective than a lot of other solutions. And that also includes homegrown or kind of self-run or self-administered solutions as well. I'll talk about this in a case study in just a moment here, but this is going to be kind of one situation where it's really going to be like, how do I kind of best stretch my dollar out? And it's going to be with more efficient technology as opposed to finding a cheaper but still contractual baseline item, I think, because with a more technological effective solution and more infrastructure centric solution, you've got the ability to scale and control your costs a lot more. So if I currently pay, X for contractual obligations every year, and I managed to lower that to, maybe 20% lower. Okay, great. I've saved 20% on that item, but I can't go lower than that, right? I'm stuck at that point, number one. I would like to be able to instead say, is there a variable in here? Is there even greater fluctuation that I can bring down as opposed to having to go back to the table and renegotiate something? One of the big takeaways that we've got with a lot of our MSSPs who we work with is actually the ability to enhance and expand their service offerings as well. This is one of the most key features I think every managed provider should be considering right now, which is, what is it I'm not doing that I wish I could do? What is the service? What is the thing that I wish I could build out a little bit more? And does my technology currently help me get there? And obviously everyone would love to simply just acquire more customers. Like, oh, we're at 100. I'd love to be at 200, right? That would be great because then I can easily just say, okay, 200 people would be X dollars and we'd be all set. But I've got to be competitive, number one. And number two, what customers want change. And if your technology is not adaptive to what customers are wanting, or if you're kind of waiting for your underlying tech stack to support a thing, and we see this happen quite often as well, where I get locked in with a certain vendor and that vendor says, oh, we just acquired a company that does identity management. When we get them integrated, you can also offer identity management as part of your services, as part of what we offer for you. And I've never really liked the idea of, oh, okay, so my ability to grow as my business is now limited to your ability to integrate with someone that you've acquired. So then what happens is we go and we outsource and we try to bring in a point solution. So now I'm running this managed services and I've got all these different point solutions that all need to integrate and all need to work together. And then as time goes on, we either forget about one or it becomes a significant portion and the others suffice, or suffer, I should say, or our vendor ends up having more. Like there becomes this really tumultuous landscape of I'm a managed security provider and I'm trying to juggle and deal with all these different technology solutions. I've got my analysts digging through platforms. We need some sort of consolidation. And then now everyone's working out of, the tech stack just gets bigger. And I'm all for a robust, powerful tech stack. I am not for a complicated tech stack because an original contractual obligation or an original technical implementation prevented me from simply adding on a thing. We take the other approach. We're vendor agnostic, obviously, meaning you can integrate and bring anything in to LimaCharlie. One. Two, what that does is if your customer as a provider comes to the table and says, hey, we just rolled out Duo and we're using that for multi-factor authentication. No preference. Duo was the first one that came to mind. We roll out a thing. We want you as our security provider to be able to help us monitor this and look for anomalies and do all sorts of things and find bad activity, because identity management, identity detection and response is a big deal right now. And it's something that we care about. I want you as a managed provider to immediately turn around and say, I got you. No problem. And if you've got a platform and an infrastructure that's scalable and allows you to get there, you can have that confidence to do it. And then the next thing you know, and this is a wonderful case study we've got with a few of our customers, the next thing you know, customer one kind of kicked that process off, Sharon. And then customer two says, oh, I see you do this thing. I want it now too. And then the next thing you know, a brand new service offering has come out of this little yes that was said earlier. But if you didn't have the confidence to say yes, you would have never known that this could have turned into a thing. We actually see this happen quite a lot with managed providers who start to integrate and bring in Microsoft data, where all of a sudden their customers are, hey, we have this massive Microsoft infrastructure. Could you help us monitor and look at all this stuff? And it's like, yes, we can. We've got the freedom to do that. We've got the ability to scale that easily. And then all of a sudden they've got a new customer list. They've got new targets. They've got ways to innovate, new things to build on, and all because they had the ability to say, yes, my platform can provide that.
Right.
And my final little takeaway point here. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that actually answers one of the questions here that came in, which was how easily can your solution be integrated with existing security tools and workflows? And so I'm kind of including all of the things that you already mentioned in there, but it sounds like the answer to that is pretty easily.
Yeah, very easy integration, and it's one of those like I hate to pick on all the buzzwords of LimaCharlie, but it's one of those like, because it's an API first and because we're kind of agnostic, like you really just need structured data to bring it in and have us kind of work through it and stuff. So as long as the data comes out in a structured format, you can set it up immediately. And I think what this does is it not only creates the list of things we integrate with to be fairly wide and infinite if you need be, but it also allows our customers to quickly innovate and develop for their own customers as well.
Okay.
So we won't go down too much into the technical weeds of it, but I mean, I was working with someone yesterday who said, hey, I need to output this particular thing. Here's the default options inside of the vendor product, inside of the monitoring software that my customer is using. Which one should I use and how can I bring it in? And there was no need to go back to the drawing board and like, okay, let's spend some time dissecting the API and figuring out what's this, what's that, and everything like that. It was like, oh, that one output option right there, you can integrate natively within LimaCharlie. We had the telemetry coming into the platform within 5 minutes. So within 5 minutes, I should say 10, because they had to talk to their customer as well. So let's say within a 10-minute window span, it went from, yes, we can support this thing, to I now see it inside of LimaCharlie. And there wasn't a support ticket required. The random happenstance that we had an update call just to check on, how the engagement's going is what turned into, oh yeah, you can easily do that thing. Here's the way to go. They can look at our documentation and figure all that out as well if they need to. I've got a lot of folks who just kind of look and they understand the processes and they just build and they just go. And I feel like that, again, brings us back to like that cloud platform model, which is, if I want to store data, I get a storage thing and I put it in there, and then the storage thing can connect to all these other services. And oh, there's the API that I need. So I just tap in that way. And all of a sudden, hey, it works, right? I've built the highway and now the data's flowing and we're good to go. Same approach for us. And that integration, that key integration capability is not just inputting, but also outputting. Where you can also say, hey, Matt, I also want to send data out to a ticketing system or my company, my to manage my different customers. We're utilizing a specific kind of case management tool, or we're utilizing a visualization platform or some sort of graph DB or whatever it might be, right? Well, I'm not going to stop you in my UI either. I'm going to say, cool, if that's a thing that you want to integrate with or you want to play around with, then send data out as well. I think that's a critical issue that a lot of security vendors, infrastructures, platforms need to recognize is sometimes you are the end destination, you're the final destination for the users. Sometimes you're a cog. And sometimes you're a cog in the machine. You may be the biggest cog, right? You may be the most important wheel that turns. You may be the one that controls the torque. You may be the one that gets the other gears turning, but you're still just a gear of many. And understanding where you fit in that process. And then again, right? I keep coming back to this. Having the ability to scale your platform accordingly is a really big benefit for your customers. We've had customers come to LimaCharlie and say, "Hey, I was using LimaCharlie for endpoint capabilities because we do have our own endpoint software. I was using LimaCharlie for endpoint capabilities. I've got a customer who uses something else. Can you help me integrate with that?" Absolutely. Done. Because I'm not here to tell you, oh, here's why you never want to use that thing, right? I'm here to say, you want to grow? Cool. I can help you grow. We can make that happen. So
you were talking about data, structured data, and moving data in and out. And we've got a question here that is asking how you can ensure that sensitive customer data is protected and that it's meeting compliance and regulatory mandates.
Yeah, absolutely. So we ourselves are built on top of Google Cloud. So and I'm not passing the buck to them. I'm saying there's an inherent security there. There's an inherent security, which means Matt isn't up at 2 a.m., Sharon, fixing the colo or something like that, right? I want to make sure no one's like, oh, that's the guy who's on the webinar. Yeah, he's also the guy who fixes the bugs, right? We obviously do have our own extremely skilled, they do not get enough public credit infrastructure team who is amazing at keeping things up and running and whatnot. But the first one is kind of like reliability. So in addition to having our own reliability team, we're also built on top of an extremely reliable platform. Inherent to that, we've got our own certifications. Obviously, we're SOC 2 certified, and kind of as we go down through the road of like what is it that I a managed provider would want to build on top of, we've got the ability to handle that. We've gone through PCI compliance. We've got folks who are using us for I'm going to say protected data. Obviously, SOC 2 compliance, like that's all in place. Nothing there that would catch anyone by surprise, but also I view those as kind of like table stakes, right? The third way that we make that possible is the idea of true multi-tenancy. The number of times that a multi-tenant approach has really been strategic database table tagging is way too many. What I mean by that, for folks who Sharon gets it, for folks who may have gotten lost in that combination of words there that I don't normally say together, a lot of times multi-tenancy is not multi-tenancy, it's just superficial. And one of the things that we make sure never happens is data doesn't coalesce. So if there is a point where you say, hey, I've got a customer with extremely sensitive data, more sensitive than others, the fourth way, Sharon, that we can deal with that is we also are globally visible as well. What I mean by that is if you want to create a tenant inside of LimaCharlie and subsequently, put customers inside of that or use that to provide service to a customer, you can deploy anywhere around the world if you want to. We've got options for US, UK, Europe, India, and Australia as well. And what that does is it allows us first to have a global reach, but two, it also allows those folks who are like, hey, I offer services in Scandinavia and we have really strict limitations on where we can store data. I say, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Does this function? Does this data center work for you? If not, let's look at the option of moving around, right? And that's not always a guarantee, right? There's some data centers that are definitely less reliable than others, not on LimaCharlie side, on our backbone side. But what it does is it gives us the other flexibility to say, if a managed provider needs something in a certain place, we can hopefully definitely accommodate that. So those are like 4 high level points that I pick on as, you know, like the easy kind of upfront superficial ways, meaning they're on the surface and they're easy to see. There's other things that we do inside of the platform. Any piece of telemetry that comes into LimaCharlie goes through an authentication and encryption process as the data as ingested and whatnot. And this is all getting around like certificate pinning versus encrypted tunnels being set up when data flows in. Our endpoint and log adapters only ingest via encrypted channels. If they can't establish an encrypted channel, that's data's not coming in. Now, of course, for some folks who are hearing this, that might be like, well, I do encrypted traffic inspection, and we do this and we do that. There's ways for us to also fit inside of those platforms too, but we feel that kind of setting that minimum standard of, I don't have a default plain text syslog output that a lot of folks might be used to. I have an encrypted channel that does require connectivity to the cloud. And the trade-off of that is your data is not being viewed or visible by someone who shouldn't be looking at it. Right. And then getting into the platform itself is, of course, wrapped in all sorts of authentication mechanisms. And that can be as strong as you need it to be. We've got MFA, SSO, whatever you might want to have. So I view that as like kind of a multi-complex accordion tier of ways we go through to protect the data and whatnot. But that's a great question. I'm glad. I like when those ones come in because it's one of my favorite customer questions, because everyone's always like, well, you probably never dealt with this before, but my data is, and I'm like, yeah, no, I've heard of that one. But yeah.
Good. Very good. So I know you were talking about case studies and examples earlier that you were going to circle back around to. Is it that time?
Yes. So I've got 2 in particular here. The first one I'll mention, and these are both publicly available, everyone. This isn't secret sauce, but I've got 2 I'll mention because I feel like these do tap into some of the key areas where I still have kind of problematic conversations with. The first one, there's an MDR provider out there who's largely SMB and mid-market focused. They wanted to build and offer kind of an agent-centric XDR service. Ignoring whatever you may feel, everyone who's watching, whatever you may feel about the acronyms, understand that they wanted to have a multi-telemetry approach towards a lesser served market. So inherently, there comes things like technology has to work, right? SMB mid-market, if that's what you're going after, you're not speaking to a security team of 10 people who's ready to help you integrate, right? You're talking with a smaller footprint and a smaller technical know-how there as well. So you need to have back-end technology that just works. There can't be many choices. So first one is they wanted to build this XDR service. They got stuck in the mental conundrum of, do we roll our own and just build this out ourselves, or do we actually build on top of like an infrastructure team or the SCP? And then where they decided to go from there was building on top of LimaCharlie, utilizing the SecOps Cloud Platform, and then turning this into, okay, we've got this idea for XDR. How quickly can we go from 0 to hero? It was 5 months. 5 months, they were able to go from conceptual idea to actual deployment, actual rollout. The other cool thing about what we've done with this company is they have flexible to the minute pricing. So they actually keep a really tight magnifying glass, Sharon, on everything that's happening. And they're able to pass those savings down to their customer as well, because they're able to query the platform. They're able to query the APIs. They're able to see how many do I have deployed this hour versus that hour, this day versus that day. And they're able to adjust accordingly and say to their customers, hey, even though when we talked, you had 50 endpoints, you've actually only deployed to 20. And yes, we need to get the other 30 deployed, but I'm not going to necessarily kind of nickel and dime you here, because I want to maintain you as a customer for a long time. So they're very responsive in that. And it also makes the technology side of it easier to manage as well. I feel like there's an inherent benefit to a service offering. if you can turn around to your customer and say, hey, we had spoken about 50, we only see 20, we need to work on those 30 and understand the visibility gap here. I feel like that's a much better conversation than a year later, let's re-up, right? And
Right.
that's not the way to go.
Yep. Yeah. A lot
The
changes in a
other,
year. So,
it does. Yeah, it does. And that's got to be a consideration for folks as well. The other use
right.
case I've got lined up here is Texas-based, and I'm in Texas, hence the reference. A Texas-based MDR firm was doing very well. Company was growing just fine, but they were hitting limitations in their custom engineered platform. The team maintaining it was certainly capable, but this other use case speaks directly to a lot of folks out there who may be structuring managed services on top of open source software, or I should say maybe open source or free to use software. I feel like this is a pretty
Okay.
typical approach as well. There's a lot of companies
Right.
out there that say, hey, it's free and I can get started really easily. So why not? Right? Why not? So why not? Why not build that way, right? Why not build on
Yeah.
top of free and open source software and whatnot?
Yeah.
So they start to build customer one, customer two, customer three, business starts to grow, so on and so forth. Next thing you know, we're at N plus one customers and the technology just doesn't budge anymore. So now we need to buy more servers or we need to hire infrastructure people. And now we need to do this. And wait a second, we're a security company. Why are we maintaining infrastructure all of a sudden?
Right.
So that's
Also,
the
this
big
was supposed
change.
to be free.
Yes. Yeah, and this was supposed to be free, and this is one of the things. And there's this funny adage, right, which is free and open source is not free.
Yep.
It takes headaches to maintain, and next thing you know, patches are required, or software vulnerabilities come out and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, yikes, right?
Mhm.
So we worked with them, and we're able to now. Let's be clear. We're not doing the monitoring services. We're not implementing detections for them. This company needed infrastructure. They needed to be able to scale much better. They needed to be able to scale much faster. We helped kind of put that in place for them.
Okay.
We took care of the infrastructure side, helped them automate it, helped them build it out, helped them make it really super easy to use. That led to, first off, new business offerings for them because they had folks who were managing infrastructure who now no longer had to do that. Their core competency as a company was not, hey, guess what, customer? We manage infrastructure really well. Their core competency was we detect activity faster than anybody else does. So they were able to streamline that. Their core competency was building visualizations and building things that their customers could use. They were able to do more of that. The time to market for them became near instantaneous. Sharon, one of the cool things about the way that they built this out, anyone on I shouldn't say anyone. I know it was the individual in charge of project management, but when a customer said, "Yep, let's go, deal is signed, ready to deploy," right? It was a single
Mhm.
button click to go from ready to deploy to, or I should say, signed to ready to deploy. I'm talking software, technology, detection rules, tenants spun up. That API first approach also allowed them to think in different ways of what else do we want to scale. Customer
Mhm.
onboarding was very fast, very quick. And when you're looking for ways to differentiate yourself between others, the ability to say, oh, cool, you signed at 9 a.m., by 10 a.m., we're ready to go. Service starts today, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to, let's figure it out. Let's see what happens and whatnot. So
Mhm.
nonetheless, that was another competitive advantage they were able to get as well. So for those two use cases, I think these are really good opportunities for managed providers out there who may be kind of hitting the technical limit, want to deploy a new thing, recognize that free and open source software is not free and open source and whatnot. And
Right.
there's better ways to do it. There absolutely are.
Fantastic. Let me ask, there's another question here that seems to tie into that. And I know you talked about being able to go on and kind of almost very quickly, at least, be able to see what the pricing options were. But this
Hmm.
question is asking what factors influence the pricing of LimaCharlie services.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the first one is going to be, so it depends on the technology getting deployed. So very similar to a cloud provider, deploying a database versus deploying a virtual system versus deploying a DNS forwarder is obviously going to be a little bit different. If you
Okay.
go and you deploy an EDR tool, which means you're utilizing LimaCharlie's EDR agent to get telemetry in that you're then going to action off of or work off of, right? That is going to be a that's going to be a set price per month, depending on scale and how much you're using. Everything else that gets brought in from a telemetry perspective is going to be dependent on volume, how many gigabytes you bring in. And that is actually, even though pricing is gigabyte, it's actually measured to the byte. It's just easier to say like a figure per gigabyte, because if we did by the byte, it would be a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, it's going to be depending on volume. So very similar to kind of really, any other approach where you're kind of dependent upon a certain source of primary telemetry and then bringing in logs in from other sources. Those are going to be your big differentiators. Is going to
Okay.
be from a pricing perspective is going to be those two. There are ways within the platform, obviously, to increase costs. I would say they're nominal, because they're usually respective to a situation, Sharon. So this kind of delves back to that
Mm-hmm.
like IR side of things where the checkbook opens up. One of the things that definitely happens during an IR that doesn't happen in other situations is the amount of data that kind of gets sucked up and analyzed during an IR is going to be significantly more than during normal standard 24/7 monitoring and stuff like
Right.
that. So there are, if I tell or via LimaCharlie, if I say, hey, I want you to go grab this additional, 50 gigs of data that normally I would not be looking at in any other capacity, there's a nominal charge for those things, but we don't hold on to those forever. We actually put the
Mm-hmm.
retention period of that data in the hands of our customers and say, hey, I understand you're in the middle of something. You might need to pull this data. You might only need it for a day or two. So
Right.
I'm only going to charge you for a day or two. I'm not going to say, all right, we're just going to dump it in the bucket and see what happens, right? It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
very respective to how long you actually need it. Yeah. Those are going to
Okay.
be the biggest kind of deciding factors.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's see. I think there was a good one here I saw I wanted to ask you about.
Hmm.
Actually, this is also kind of related. How
Okay.
can you handle rapid growth and fluctuating workloads? Speaking of
Yeah. So this
fluctuating
one
workloads.
stems, yeah, this one stems directly back to the scalability issue, where if if you've got, it's kind of easy to think of growth as, oh, I'm a managed provider and I just acquire more customers, right? So therefore I've grown.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that there's actually a more difficult way for you to grow your business, which is your customers grow their business. And that may be,
Ah,
I'm providing managed services for a company who then acquires someone else, right? And we can get like layers deep here, Taryn, but what it really comes
right?
down to is I may have a customer that right now has 1,000 endpoints. They might make a strategic acquisition that doubles their footprint or something, right? And I want to have the flexibility to say, oh, you, my customer, have grown. I got you. No problem. I can integrate and bring these things in really easily if I need to, right? That's scalability. That is simply just saying, do I have the infrastructure that can support a thing and can allow me to just grow up as I need to?
Mm-hmm.
And for us, the answer is yes, you absolutely do have the ability to scale up if need be. Um, the flip side of that, of course, is you acquire new customers as a managed provider and you say, okay, we've brought on 10, 15 new customers this quarter, this year, whatever it might be. Can our infrastructure scale accordingly? And with us, the answer is yes. Like it's a new tenant. And it feels
Mm-hmm.
kind of weird, but whenever you create a new tenant, it is a clean slate. I can have a managed, I can provide MSSP services and my target market can be 15 to 20 endpoints per customer. And for whatever reason, that's our sweet spot, right, Sharon? And then one of
Yeah.
our salespeople gets really, really aggressive and they go and land 1,000 endpoint customer. And I'm using simple numbers here for conversational sake. But if my whole entire business has been built around 20% of what someone just landed as a big contract, I'm probably not really well versed in how to handle that if I'm rolling my own infrastructure or if I'm relying on a contract. I'm probably not versed in, I now need 5x from an infrastructure perspective, what I had before, how do I go and deal with that? With us, you literally just create a new tenant and you go. Like you're like, I need
Okay.
1,000. It's like, okay, we take care of the scaling. And that's how we enable, again, I think the like business side, the sales side of MSSPs and MDRs out there to say, go sell that big thing, right? Go sell that big thing because our infrastructure can match you accordingly, no matter who you bring in. If they bring in different log sources you've never seen before, we got you covered. If they bring in different data types or you want to provide a service you haven't before, we got you covered. That's how you grow.
Gotcha. All right, folks, if you have any other questions, send them in now. We're getting to the top of the hour and we will run out of time for your questions. So if you have them, send them to me and Matt. Mostly Matt, because
Yes.
he knows this stuff.
If anyone has a question for Sharon, send it in too.
Definitely send them in. Let's see. We do have one or two more here that I can throw at you. We had talked about the performance and the reliability aspects there, and you touched on this just now when you were discussing the scalability issues, but like if an MSSP's business is growing, how can you, on your end, guarantee or support, maybe not guarantee is not the right word, but how can you support that their performance and reliability as they grow?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually a really good question because I think, Sharon, this stems down to like confidence. I think this stems down to an MSSP who's trying to grow and is doing so on shaky technology. It's really tough to like gain the confidence to say, I can go land that big fish, or I can go sell those new accounts, or I can go do that thing.
Right.
Because you're not really too sure if the underlying tech can provide it. And I feel like if you're trying to go to market with like an outstanding list of support tickets and things that just don't work, it becomes really tough when your prospects ask you a question and you're like, yeah, we're supposed to be able to do that, but
Right.
it's not really working right now, right? It doesn't really instill much confidence, and therefore
No.
you're not setting yourself up for reliability, right?
Yeah.
We kind of view like uptimes and SLAs and everything as the important confidence foundation for any of our managed service customers to go out there and say, hey, I can jump into a demo tenant, a demo organization. I can jump into whatever kind of preview I might have, and I can show you how everything works and looks right now. And it's going to be the same now, tomorrow, a week from now, whatever it might be. We can kind of stand on that. If anything, it will get better, right? The minimums of what are there. And I view this a little bit too, where like, again, kind of following that cloud platform model, which is as their customers, and in a typical cloud platform, as their customers are growing, they're also releasing kind of new products to match what their customers need. Hey, we noticed we had a really big account that required a bunch of DNS capabilities. So we created a DNS service and we're making it available to everyone, right? We function in a very similar way. We've got an add-ons and an extensions capability within the platform that lets us expand and add on whatever functionality might be out there. So as we've worked more with our customers, they've come forward and they've said, hey, we need to be able to integrate with malware analysis capabilities. We need to be able to integrate with threat intelligence. We need to be able to integrate with advanced collection tools. We need to be able to integrate with ticketing systems and case managements and all sorts of things that are out there. And we need that to deliver our service. And again, we're at the idea of confidence, right? And when we turn around and we say, gotcha, done, we can make that integration happen, we can make it possible, it boosts up that confidence at the very beginning, and it makes it a lot easier to say, yes, we can do that thing because LimaCharlie helps us integrate with that thing. And one of the like stigmas, and I've mentioned this before, so it's a little repetitive here for me now, but I like saying it again and again. One of the stigmas that I want to break out of is, oh, I can't do that because our tech stack doesn't allow us to do that. I feel like that's very limiting in a discussion where you're kind of trying to paint your prospects in a corner and be like, as long as you fit this mold, we can work together. But the moment you try to step
Yeah.
outside of the mold, it doesn't work anymore. So that all stems back to that ability to be confident and say, yeah, my business grows as my customers want it to grow because I've got infrastructure that lets me grow with them as opposed to limiting what they can and can't do.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that is a great place to stop. We've covered all of the questions we needed to get through. So thank you so much, Matt, for coming on and teaching all of us about LimaCharlie and the SecOps Cloud Platform and the benefits that can be yours. Thank you
Love
so
it.
much to the audience for sticking around with us and checking this out. If you want to share this webinar with your friends, family, colleagues, anyone, you'll be able to do so within about 24 hours as it has been recorded. And please come back and join us again on another MSSP Alert webcast. Matt, thank you again. Audience, thank you again. I am Sharon Florentine signing off. Thanks so much.
Sharon, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet. Come back anytime.
Will do. Thank you.
Awesome.